notification now telling you that we're recording. So look, once again, you are all very welcome to this session as part of National Volunteer Week. We're delighted to have Colm Croffy from AOIFE joining us, and Colm is going to talk to us today about kind of community festivals and events and sort of the implications of COVID and the sort of work that we can be doing as part of that. Just a reminder to everybody to sign in just via the chat, just to put in your name and the group or the events that you're representing. This is one of 4 sessions that myself and Eamon and Damien from the Volunteer Centre are running this week. So we've had 2 really successful sessions so far this week with, on Monday, I'm trying to think what we had, it's so far away. We had Aidan Spence in talking about social media marketing for charity shops. Yesterday we had a really interesting talk from a guy called Simon Ruddy about single-use plastic and environmental issues and stuff like that.
That's putting a lot of pressure on Colm now.
It is. No, well, that's it. You know, tomorrow we'll be seeing with 2 really good sessions on Colm. You know, you never know. But no, we have tomorrow we have Maria Whelan, CBT therapist, coming into a wellness session with us as well. Which, you know, so we're trying to offer little bits of different things kind of going on. The reason I suppose we got in touch with Colm and we kind of engaged with Colm around this sort of topic is that we see a lot of groups are dependent on fundraising and a lot of small festivals and small events. And I suppose we all panicked over COVID and everything was shut down, and then things can't reopen and some stopped reopening, and God knows tomorrow Donegal could be on level 4 again, so we could be all closed. But you know, it's sort of there, and it's an issue in the background, and it's something that was concerning us because we could see a lot of communities were struggling with it. So we asked Colm over the summer to have a kind of think about it and to work up some ideas with us. And thankfully he agreed to come and join us and to participate in it. So, you know, we have him coming in for the session today, and look, it's fantastic for ourselves to have that facility and to be able to link out, I suppose, through Zoom. And it's the advantage of Zoom for everybody that we're able to do this, and we're able to maybe connect with people and network with people that we wouldn't outside of it. So look, Colm, if you're okay to kick off and share your screen, it's 3 o'clock now, so yep. We'll take it from there. So if you have any questions at any stage, just stick them in the chat, and if everybody could sign in on the chat, that'd be great. So Colm, all yours. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Can everybody see me and everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Great, good. Someone is coming back. Okay. Very happy to be here. Very happy to be with the Donegal Volunteer Centre. And it's not death by PowerPoint, but I've just a couple of slides that I'm going to use to sort of signpost and to remind myself over the course of a 40-minute discussion what things I need to impart to you. The work that I do and have been doing for the last number of seasons is very much anchored in Ireland, but I'm connected through a variety of other festival networks, principally the AOIFE World Network, which is based in Boise in Idaho. We manage the European chapter of that here in Galway, and also the European Festival Association, which is about 115 of the larger arts festivals of Europe and about 16 of the national collectives. We'd be a national collective in that we are an association who has a countrywide or an island-wide remit. And some of the things I'm going to share with you today aren't just specific to Ireland and its zone in the COVID wars, but also what is happening in other parts of the world, because different places are in different parts of this cycle. And it's interesting to see what other people and community groups and not-for-profit groups in the main are doing. The one link that's connected to us all across the world is that we commemorate, we celebrate, and we congregate for the joy of being human beings in a place, rather than for the necessity of having to generate dividends for shareholders. So we're not for profit orientated, and that's very much the world in which I operate in. So this isn't going to be a discussion about whether the NEFIT has it right or whether the Department of Arts, Sports, Tourism and everything else has it wrong in relation to guidelines that are floating around and regulations and fire officer discussions and stuff. I'm going to signpost the group to the official codes and regulations that are as up to date as I can find at the end of this chat, because I want us to concentrate on some more fundamental things. I was lucky to get away for a couple of days in August. I did a tour of the Northern Arc, as I would have said, from Slieve League across to Slieve Donard. And one of my guides in the Titanic Centre was very witty and reminded me that the Titanic was built by professionals, but that the Ark was built by amateurs. And I think never was there a more truer time in the world for that dictum to hold true, in that even the professionals in the sector or allied to this industry are finding it very difficult to pick their way through the forest of conflicting advices, of differing market sentiment, of communities and people and audiences being in different places. So I think we need to understand first and foremost that the best people who are placed to make collective decisions about their own community are people who are anchored in that community. And that's not disrespecting anyone who's a professional in the arts, culture, or event world, but just that those of us who are anchored know instinctively, or should know instinctively, what will fly or won't fly. I don't want to disparage anyone's day, but I certainly was elated coming out of lockdown, and I certainly had conversations in the early part of June where most people in officialdom and in this centre were thinking that we would be pretty much back to normal for Christmas if a vaccine had been found, or if the spread of the contagion was not enough to engulf the hospitals. Tragically, as we're all learning, we are going to be living for the next 6 to 8 months, somewhere between stages 2, 3, and 4. We won't be living without any stage, I think, personally, until autumn or winter of next year. And that, according to best placed opinion, is a very optimistic view. So living between stages 2, 3, and 4 is something that we as event organizers or festival organizers and our audiences are going to have to get slowly more used to. And allied to that issue is the fact that no matter what we plan for and how elaborate our plans are, how microscopic an attention to detail they are, the plans could come to naught within 22 hours of a government localized lockdown or a localized move anywhere along that plane of intervention 324. So that's a really, really messy situation to be in. But I think watching what others in New Zealand and Canada and the UK are doing, we have some things to learn from them. So today's chat is focusing on what we can do, not on what we cannot, because if we go near the cannots, we'll just end up being more frustrated than we are. When I talk about festivals and events in this sector, to me, it's about assembling a variety of jigsaw pieces to give you the complexity or the total picture that is the jigsaw. And there are loads of jigsaw pieces, but today I just want to concentrate for a spine of this presentation to look at 8 key ones. And for me, there's the audience, number 1, whom you put this event on for. 2, there's the supporters. And I think supporters, because of COVID and because of the pandemic, are becoming more important to us, or as least as, because not those who can now support can attend. And there's the differentiation. Before, people could be much more passive in their support because attendance wasn't such a Herculean effort. Now attendance will be a Herculean effort. It will be for a minority activist, but the supporters can still be supporters in many ways that we haven't thought of yet. Core to a festival celebration or an event are the artists and entertainers, and they're having a right tough time with this weather. Speaking within the parameters of a volunteer centre, it's funny, in all my work of working with festivals, they'll tell me that volunteers are their most important thing, and then when they pull out their budget, they'll show me the least amount of money being spent on volunteers. And I know volunteers are not meant to be paid. Yes, they are to be rewarded. Yes, they are to be recognised. But the level of investment that we make in our volunteering core is weak in a lot of our community festivals and events. And we have some time now in the crash and burn of this year, and perhaps a more slower type of next season, to reposition and reconfigure how we're going to recruit, maintain, and retain the volunteer brigades, battalions, teams that we have. Stakeholders in the festival event environment tend to be the ones that you can see straight away in terms of all funders and sponsors, but there are other latent stakeholders like buildings owners, like community development councils, parish councils, heritage trusts, the local authorities that have their own issues outside of funding. And again, if your stakeholders don't know why you exist and don't know what you're trying to achieve for a Melton or for a Downings or for a Gidoi or for Donegal, you're going to be in trouble. We all have a range of suppliers that we work with. It's funny, I spoke to a marquee supplier 10 days ago, and I said, imagine there must be nothing in your yard. The ploughing isn't happening. And he said to me, Colm, I've never been as busy since the end of August. I said, sure, there's nothing on. He said, wait a minute. He said, all the schools that went back needed ancillary facilities. They needed new classrooms, they needed new staff rooms, they needed new assembly halls. If the assembly halls will be used or quartered up into classrooms. So a lot of the tented supplies of the island are located to schools or to corona testing centres or indeed to industry. But we have relationships with our core suppliers, and we can control those. Funders, this is the bit that I thought I'd have locked down better today, but I don't. I think we have relationships with funders. We want better relationships with ones who are not in our funding cycle. Now is a good time to start conversations with them. But to be fair, the Arts Council is much more ahead of Fáilte, and the local authorities are playing catch up, to be fair. And the local authorities don't know whether they're going to fund an activity or fund a social enterprise.
Can I interrupt there for a second?
Yes.
Just in case you think you're sharing the screen, you're not.
Did I lose the screen?
Be seeing slides? You're.
I'm terribly sorry. It told me I was okay. Let me go back.
Yeah.
Can you? Sorry, folks. Goodness. That's embarrassing now. Okay, let me go back to share the screen.
Yeah.
And share.
That's it. You started screen sharing there now. So
okay.
Right. So if you hit from current slide there on that, that's you.
Sorry about that, folks. Yeah. Okay. Now, can
Perfect.
people see the
Thank
screens? You. Sorry, guys. Whoops. I was muttering about funders and the fact that the local authorities they're not, who I think are very advanced in what they're going to do for the festival event scene. And I think the tourism board is at 6s and 7s because the tourism board don't know what you're going to call a visitor for season 2021. I have some views on that. I think the local authorities will be key to how groups find ways and resources to manage what they want to manage next year, because allied to that is the fact that sponsors and sponsorships will be tricky to acquire, given the perilous state of the business cycle. So I want to look at those building blocks in some detail. One of the things that I thought was interesting from a previous chat that I did at the start of this year was just to take a look at the domestic visitor and what they were looking for in community, in peripheral, in rural locations, in terms of their feeling of freedom, looking for an experience of discovery. And this material is coming from Fáilte. So again, it's this far away from the unusual, the routine and culture. Learning has cropped up in the last 2 or 3 seasons quite significantly. A more comfortable and more relaxed pace, although I suspect after lockdown that mightn't feature. Accessibility, walking, a range of exploration, not just to go to one event and to zone in on just traditional folk or traditional music, but a range of exploration across the history, culture, and perhaps even architecture coming into it. Buildings and going and just looking at things will come back into their own in the next few seasons again. Not being told what to do, it reminds me of school a bit. Of course, food and cafe culture is there significantly. And what's interesting that's coming back into the consumer behavior and consumer insights data is the exhaustion that there is with Wikipedia, to some degree Google, and looking for information just from the social media or the website, but allying that to some actual local insight on the ground. And I often wonder if the wiser communities are the ones who are going to prepare for the next wave of visitors who will want more feel-good or connected ambassadors to their parish or place than they currently have at present, because of what this lockdown or lock-in physiology is doing. So looking at the audience issues, it is typically your community. It's typically, they are your visitors. They're your hardcore, if you like, to an event. In the last few seasons, all funders, particularly Fáilte and, to be fair, some of the local authorities, have been asking festival organisers for their audience data. In other words, what gender is turning up, what age profile is turning up. And there was a huge degree of harumph amongst most of the community festival organisers in gathering this, because it was putting another layer or burden of activity upon them. But you cannot run an event for everybody. Everybody may very well be welcome, but you only need the attendees there who have the time, the capacity to travel, or to turn up, and those that you can market to. And again, it's not possible to market to everybody, because your marketing budget, or your marketing spend, or marketing effort is a defined resource. So I'm saying out loud to the community groups that I'm working with that now is a good time to take stock of two things. Who your core audience has been or was for the last 3 or 4 seasons, where your target audience might be. And that mightn't be just around in a 5K or a 10K radius. It might also be within that one tank drive within a sort of 100 to an 80 kilometer radius. And also where some of the new community people have arrived from. There's interesting migration and immigration patterns happening around different counties that would suggest to I suppose the commentariat that the next wave of that will be the exiting of the metropolitans of a certain type of individual and family who move to the west or move to the rural locations for a calmer, less pressurized commute lifestyle. And talking to some auctioneers along the Wild Atlantic Way, that activity and that looking for property has started from the metropolitan classes. So they will be new audience for your events, there'll be new audience for community building, and there will be new audience for volunteers, possibly, if you can hook them in. What's interesting for me is the fact that because audience, the mass event and the large 600 people in a community hall or 500 people in the church for Phil Coulter, that is not going to happen, ladies and gentlemen, for at least, I would think, 28 to 26 months. And yes, the virus could be found about 2 days after the American election, but by the time the virus comes to market, or the vaccine, sorry, I want to talk about vaccine and virus. By the time a vaccine comes to market, there are logistic issues to make sure it can be delivered cold. There are legal issues as to who, what are the ramifications and side effects from taking it. There'll be the pricing issues. There'll be a whole raft of ding-dong with that for 5 to 6 months that'll play. And then there's the other issue that I think we need to be very frank about, is that citizen sentiment is running far advanced, far ahead of government regulations. And again, if you look at the commentary from government sources and from media sources, there is a wide variety of research in the last particular 4 weeks that suggests that people in Ireland in particular, and perhaps in the States and other places, not so much Canada, not so much Australia, because they think they've got a handle on it, that people would prefer to see more restrictions and prefer to see more limitations than what the government is prepared to just give their bylaws and bylaws for. And I think that's going to have a significant impact at the other end of the cycle. If the government said tomorrow, Croke Park and all the stadia in Donegal are free to go into for a crowd of 8,000 people, exactly who will turn up? Because the reality and ramifications of having to listen to what we've had to listen to since the Bergamo scenes in northern Italy in late February means that people are in a very frightened place. And I don't think, to me, the canaries in the coal mine will be funerals and congregational faith. And when you see a large crowd in Ireland at a funeral without social distancing, and when you see a large crowd attending a Church of Ireland service or a Roman Catholic Mass or any other faith-based activity in a temple or a place of worship, we can go back to people being comfortable in large crowds without regulations. And that's not this side of 24 months. So I think the new norm is to try and get our heads around the fact that we're going to be living in this space and trying to micromanage events and activities as best we can in it. And as a result of that, the audience is going to be minuscule, but the supporters will be great. So in Tralee, for example, in Kerry, the number of supporters of the festival would far outweigh the people who get into the Dome. And for years, they didn't have to do anything about that because they just turned up on telly, turned up in the streets. mass gathered to wave their flags, say good luck to the Mary from Dunlow, or say good luck to whoever was participating. They can't do that anymore under these ordinances. So how can event and community organisers connect to those supporters and make them feel part of a party that they can't get into because of where we're at? And that to me is a fundamental request, or a fundamental building block for keeping the relationship between those who are positively disposed towards the Ballyshannon Folk Festival, towards the Rory Gallagher Festival, towards the Mary from Dunlow, towards the Letterkenny Folk Festival, or whatever it is. How do you keep the supporters engaged? And I think I'm going to give you some suggestions on that. I think owning the narrative and allowing them some space in the bandwidth to share their collective memories and their individual memories with you during this time will be quite important. And it's not just about the monetizing of their support. It's also that when we come out of this location, of this process, that there is a body of people in our communities and who are of the community, but perhaps are overseas, who will rally to the cause and assist us again. Our artists and entertainers, I think there isn't enough conversations going on between festival organisers, event organisers, and the artistic and cultural and entertainment community as to what could be contrived or what could be attempted. And I think a great deal of the artists that tend not to be the performing artists, the ones who tend to work in the craft stores, the ones who are the visual artists, the potters, the ceramicists, the wood turners, the jewellery makers, the leather workers, who work in small studios, who tend only to come out 3 or 4 times a year around a large gathering to sell their wares. They have a role now that they never had before in animating sidewalks, in animating public places where people can meander, not congregate, but meander. And I think one of the things that each event group should try and do is to compile a list or to ascertain exactly who is a creative in their community. And just literally start a conversation through Facebook or WhatsApp, I don't care, or even a stand tish in a coffee dock or a walk. There's a creative walk every Saturday at 11, and those who are working in the space can come and share some ideas as to how they could illuminate or activate a calendar or a weekend or an activity where our festival or our event traditionally used to be. Entertainers, there's a whole host of issues going on around communities about putting people up on trucks and pulling them around places and doing impromptu performances with 1-man and 2-person shows in sidewalks and boardwalks. Again, the dilemma is the congregational aspect. If a crowd of more than X gathers, the organizer is in trouble. So if it's mobile, if it's the circus entertainer on the monocycle, it's moving through a crowd that are outside a traditional market, you're in a better position. But tragically, we can't, in these regulations, get somebody to perform on stage for more than 50 people if that's indoor. And outdoor, it depends on whether you're in stage 2, 3, or 4. There's just some ideas about defining the audience and also analysing the market. Why would people go to an event that you're putting on? What's different about your event from the event 60 kilometres down the road? What are the motivational prompts? Is it price? Is it the quality of what you're producing? Or is it the fact that Paul Brady hasn't played in Kincastle in 5 years and people will give their eye teeth to go and sit in to an intimate fireside concert with him in Kincastle or in the Cushlucha? I don't know. But a little bit of drilling down on that needs to be done. Also, the CSO is a wonderful resource, the Central Statistics Office, and the figures they analyse. They have every postal district, not town, not village, not urban area. Every postal district is literally chiseled down into numbers of males, females, and the age group of the cohorts. And if you have some data yourself from your event, you can mine that to see where the gaps are or who you have been missing for the last number of seasons, and to start putting reach out blocks in place to them to see if they will come to the next edition in whatever shape or fashion that's going to take. So have a little think about that. And this is some of the stuff that when you go to a festival committee or you go to a teams producing event on a normal annualized year, they never have time to think these processes through. There never is enough time to do this boring work because the next application has to be in, or the next parade has to be organised, or that we have to book the artists and the entertainers for the dome, etc., etc., etc. There's always something right up here against our noses. So I think this interregnum, if you like, between season 2019 and whenever the next normal season comes again is a good time to drill down and get on top of some of these things. Volunteers, far be it from me to talk about volunteers with the wonderful knowledge of Eamon and John from the Volunteer Centre, but I just think in terms of a festival and event matrix, most volunteers who volunteer for festival events have other responsibilities within our communities. They're involved in the school board, they're involved in sports, they're involved in the hospice, they're involved in special needs, they're involved in social services. And as a result of the cocooning and the lockdown measures of the first sort of 110 days since the 10th of March, they're bloody exhausted. And nobody seems to have the energy for a meeting about a Halloween walk town.
Sorry, folks, that froze there. Colm, you're muted.
Am I back on again?
You are indeed. Sorry, apologies about that. Should this happen and should we lose you all, if you click the link again, we'll let everybody back in. So, Colm, back over to you. Apologies about that.
No hassle. Look, technology is going to be doing this for quite some time. I was talking about...
gold you were talking about.
I just don't find where it was. Yes, I was muttering about my volunteers. So to try and find a way to amplify the role of your volunteer tribe within your event that makes them feel warm and connected and engaged about the good summers, the good autumns, the good Christmases, the good Halloweens they had. And some of the wiser festivals in the world have been asking volunteers to share their favorite family memory or their earliest memory in that collective space. So the kinetic energy that brought them together in the first place can be at least maintained. And then asking them some questionnaires, some surveys about what would you like to see next? What could we do next? If this is a pause year and we're not going to do it as big as we normally do, what other things would you like to see if we were starting from a ground zero again? The new barriers, I think, that are there as well, we have to be conscious that for the last 10 years, we have enjoyed in this space, particularly, the new teenagers, the over 60s and those who've retired early, and maybe some of the active retirees, have come to this space in their droves to help out with box offices, with programming, with sponsorship raising, with fundraising, with backstage, front stage, hospitality. There's a myriad of positions where they have been. And now, because of their fears of the medical advice, they're not in a position to be front and center. That doesn't mean they don't want to be involved. They still want to stay connected. So have a think about how you would allocate some roles or responsibilities that they could do from the safety of their own lodge, their own apartment, their own house, or in ones or twos together without coming to a large meeting or being physically confronted with large crowds and places that are not safe if they have underlying conditions. So that's a new barrier that we have to think around. Stakeholders outside of funders, are we still okay? Yeah, I'm just seeing a new prompt here. Stakeholders, I think you need to, I think the new government roadmap is going to take a few weeks to bed in. And I think by around the end of October, it would be advisable to just reach out to whoever your stakeholders are to have a 20-minute conversation about this is where we are, this is what we're half thinking of doing for Paddy's Day or for Christmas or for the New Year swim or for the Easter break next year. Where do you think your hotel might be? Where do you think the centre might be? Where do you think whatever the stakeholder, the residents association, where are the Parks and Recreation Department of Donegal with use to this facility? Oh well, it'll be all subject to COVID. Yes, But let's leave the subject of COVID bit aside. Can we still have a discussion about how we might be able to use it or work together? And again, a similar conversation with suppliers. And I think in this sector, suppliers are a mine of information that never gets mined. They have seen how things are being done and delivered in other locations. And it would be no harm if we were frank enough to say, we're really frustrated here. We used to have a great puppet show every Holy Thursday in the parish hall. Can't have it this year. Have you seen puppetry work anywhere on your summer candy floss tour or where you were with the PA? And you'd be surprised at what they would respond back to. There's another inspirational quote that I picked up from a Dutch presentation 2 weeks ago. During a storm, the meek seek the shelter, while the opportunistic build the windmills. Very Dutch. But I suppose true. You know, what silver linings are there in this cloud? And for festivals and for events, it may be the ones that have outgrown their footprint. It may be the ones that are becoming too complex to manage from just a volunteer based. It may be the ones that are attracting the wrong crowd to a seaside town who don't particularly want that crowd anymore around them. And maybe this is a good time to see opportunities to change that. Funders, as I said, I would prefer to be more concrete in this. This is a fluid situation. I think the best you can do is to keep engagement with your funders. Attend any conferences, seminars, workshops they put on. Respond to all the questions. Well, most of us are questionnaire out of it by now. If I see another questionnaire, I'm going to scream. However, they are letting funders know who is on the radar, who is actively engaged, and who they may be able to form an alliance with when money and programs come on flow again. Sponsors is the area that we are going to have most difficulty with, because the high street of Ireland has changed fundamentally prior to COVID, in that most of the discount stores or retailing stores are owned and managed by conglomerates with headquarters in Dublin. And there's your €20 voucher for your raffle, your festival, your event, and right to head office if you want anything else. And the family-run businesses were left to pharmacy, hospitality, and perhaps some level of general retailing with the support of the Musgrave Group or the other large multiples that are there. Those groups have not had a good 6 to 9 months. I know certainly in some parts of the Wild Atlantic Way, retail and hospitality has done particularly well in July and August, but that's just to pay the insurance bills and the overheads to keep them going to next Paddy's Day. So they're not going to be in a position to invest a 700 or €1,000 sponsorship in an event or a festival. So you're going to have to be clever and start thinking about sponsorship in kind, product in kind, or how you can work in delivering them more sales, that's all they want, and how you can get some resources to assist you with your event. Yeah. So that's a different conversation than we're over here, we're doing great work for the community, and we need €1,000 of your turnover. And we'll call it a sponsorship. That's a different type of conversation. So Jimmy Joe is sitting over there. He had a pub that was closed for 7 months. He missed his 3 busiest months of the year. And there's a traditional music festival weekend going to happen with limited seating, limited capacity, etc., etc., etc. And we're still expecting Jimmy Joe to come up with €500. Not going to happen. So an honest conversation with Jimmy Joe about what he or she can provide or could look at doing with us to allow for both events to happen successfully is different than sending out the begging letters for the sponsorship, which is something that we all tend to do. So we need to be a bit more frank and creative there. The other challenge that we have to rise to is not to make any plans at all until such time as we're clear of what can happen. If I was to be really honest with you, I think this is going to be the decade of the century where clarity about forward planning is going to be fully absent. Because as sure as eggs, when we have the virus for COVID-19, COVID-20 is going to trot around the planet as well. So the new norm is the new norm. And we need not to jettison planning because, oh, sure, there's no point. Because the government could do X, the government could do Y. There could be no government. I don't know. But so we still have to plan. What the wiser folk in the festival and event scene are saying out loud in Canada, in New Zealand, and Australia is to plan micro actions that can be upscaled rather than planning a full 9-day festival that has to be downscaled. Because you're going to lose volunteers, lose stakeholder input, audience will get pissed off, and people are going to go, what the name of Jesus were they at? Whereas if you design something that's quite boutique, quite small, can happen with 35 people in the parish centre, or in the old disused church, or in the Jimmy Jack's back function suite, which will turn into a theatre controlled environment area with 50 maximum seats, social distance, whatever the regulations are at the time you're going to produce. And if the regulations change in the lead up, and you can upscale that event, because it's quicker, easier to upscale than to downscale. And for what it's worth, the Arts Council was very good in paying festivals and community arts groups to honour their commitments for season 2020 because of the calamity that befell us. I don't think that latitude will be given by the Competent Auditor General in season 2021. So we cannot assume that we will just get all our costs funded even if we don't run for season 2021. So micro is good, and to upscale them. So what sort of stuff do I think the festival event season can be or can do for next year? I think anything to do with a recitation, a reading, a review. It could be a review of what's happening in your town, your parish, your community, your art scene for the last 12 months or last 10 years, done by 2 or 3 people, will be fine. Stand up, and this is to an indoor audience of 50 people. It could be to an outdoor audience of larger, depending on the venue. Plays and drama for voices. One of the things that I'm picking up is that people are getting visually zoomed out. And we're heading into the winter months, which means that the capacity for Netflix from 6 p.m. on the sofa right through till 12 midnight, plus a half day in the office being Zooming with meetings, means visually we are actually going to be very tired. But the podcast and the audio element is something that we can still tune into while we're washing the pots, doing the laundry, fixing the shelf in the shed, putting the kids into the bath, doing other stuff. We can also listen. And I think chatting to some people for the few days of August that I got to be a normal human being, everyone reckoned that TV had a bad COVID, Irish TV in particular, but that RTE radio and community radio had a very good lockdown. And whether that was just us responding to the fact that we prefer to hear while we can keep us as busy as opposed to have to fully commit to watching something, I don't know. But festivals and events that can do little podcasts with dramas for voices, a recital is something that's going to be able to work. And again, I'm looking at some of the clever artists and promoters out there who are willing to take the 50 seats, but to put the other 200 seats behind a paywall so that you can absorb some of the cost of the production and the artiste from people who watch the show live from the Letterkenny on Greenon or wherever the venue is, and watch it from the comfort of their own home. In Skibbereen this summer, they did something which was quite interesting with some of the hotels. They actually had in the hotel lounges a simulcast through Facebook Live of something that was happening in the community hall. Yeah. So the technology between Zoom and Skype and Facebook Live is there to share stuff freely if you're lucky enough to have the resources to do it, but also the paywall is available, I suppose. One-man shows will be very important. I think Gary Hines led the way in that with her Druid reworking for the City of Culture Druid tour, where they dropped the cast and crew of something quite large and reduced it to the Lady Gregory plays, which are really 3- and 4-handers, and there's very little interactive animation on stage with them. And she's touring that as part of the Galway City of Culture, European City of Culture programme this September around Galway. Trail and Sea, this is something that the Scottish Highlands Islands have been doing rather well for years, where you take a 5K route and you put the Santa cabins or you put the pop-up shelters every 600 metres or 750 metres, where there's an artist or a creative or a visual expression of what's going on. Or it could be a piper, or it could be a harp maker, or it could be a bowron maker who's doing something with the instrument of the art and then can do a small performance for the 6 or 8 walkers who walk the loop. And that's something that we're going to have to get, I suppose, more involved in over the coming few months, because the outdoors is going to be a huge comfort blanket for all of us. So cycles in a safe way, again, walks and treks. and to weave them through whatever festival program or production that you can come up with will I think pay dividends. Pushes, strollers, the stroll on view, hugely popular in California. So are we still seeing my slides, or have I lost you again? We're good. Okay. I haven't taken any comments or looked at the comments, but I will in a minute. I just think I'm not going to talk too much today about marketing, because marketing is a resource-dependent activity. In other words, you need budget to market. And I think one of the most underrated elements of festival and event marketing is the public relations function. And if you've been watching local media at all, they are starved of content and starved of copy. The normal 36-page Connacht Tribune is down to 28. You can see all the publications getting smaller because they don't have resources to go out and bring in the copy. So into this space is something that we could become quite adept at doing, in sharing our stories, in sharing human interest angles, in sharing connections that were made. If your festival or event is 20, 35, 30, 10 years old, sharing old programs, there's a whole pile of storytelling that we can drop into the media space at Christmas time, at Halloween time, at New Year, at Lála Bhríde, at St. Patrick's Day, into the Cosc and Easter, that even if the event is only taking place in September, October, we can use the news cycle to feed in material which will reignite, rekindle connectivity and understanding of our unique narrative. The digital highway is something that we all need to spend at least 10 weeks between now and next season cleaning up. I try and explain the digital highway, or your online social media presence, as the way Tidy Towns operated for 20 years, which was you planted all the rhododendrons and all the flowers on the way into town to welcome the visitor, but you left the town centre just swept. And a lot of people put up the website and put up their photograph and one video, 2 or 3 main pieces of information on their Facebook page or their Instagram account, Twitter, and that's it. They leave it there. And unfortunately, the social media highway that we live in now, it needs to be like outside your premises. It needs to be swept on a regular basis. You need to put new things in the window. And I would have thought by now, every festival that didn't have an edition this year in Ireland would have had all the previous editions, or at least 1 per 3 years or 1 per 5 lookbacks up there on their Facebook pages, and anything that was old and outdated removed or taken down. Not so. The amount of fossilized bones that are sitting up there belong to us is unreal. And if we did nothing else between now and the October bank holiday weekend, but removed the dead names, the dead numbers, the premises that don't exist, the premises that have changed hands from all our up-to-date information, we will be doing ourselves a huge, huge favor. Video sharing, photo sharing, allowing the audience and the supporter to like and share and to submit copy and content for elements of your pages or your social media presence that you're trying to update. You know, how many people here, if your festival was as old as the Mary from the Know, would have 20 photographs from the 1960s? Would you have 60 photographs from the 70s? Could you do a reeling back the years video on YouTube by Christmas time, when hopefully we will have some relatives home? Would that be possible? Would you have enough material from the last 4 or 5 decades? Most of us would not, or they'd all be with Kitty, the secretary, in her house under the piano in the orange box. They wouldn't be scanned in and ready to go in a digital space. So that's something that we can do, while we're not operating formally as such. The other thing that I would try and do is do a couple of surveys or a couple of quickfire questions to your online tribe in relation to fundraising, coming together, helping out, brainstorming. There's no point in brainstorming in this calamity with 5 or 6 around a log cabin fire. We need to brainstorm in the digital space as well, so as that those youngsters who left and who used to be stewards or volunteers at our festivals, or who had their first dances at the carnivals, or loved the being involved in the drama in Ballyshannon at the 1X, and they're now in Boston or Birmingham or Brisbane and can't get home, they too would like to have an involvement. And very often you might get some sinews of great energy and ideas from those locations. I think we need to find our ambassadors and those people who have online followers and tribes who will willingly and happily come to your assistance. So And again, oh, well, we don't have this, we don't have a filmmaker, we don't have a model, we don't. Well, work with what you have. So who's the county player in whichever code? Football obviously is Donegal, but perhaps there's a basketballer in your town who is now doing some great stuff for the basketball league in the States, or is on a soccer team in the UK, soccer player. Sporting stars who would have childhood recollections of being involved in the event or the festival 15 or 20 moons ago, and will be happy to share that space and be an ambassador for the event over the next 12 months to get it to the normal program and presentation that we're all used to having, or that we prefer to see. Just looking at some of the trends, folks, that I'm picking up. Well, first one is that post-COVID acceptance will be that the planet has been wrecked. So that's going to feed into this whole issue of environmental sustainability being key. So running festivals and running events, there's going to have 5 skips of rubbish on the main street of Dunloe is going to be up there with burning and drowning witches. Not going to happen. The audience will not be comfortable in coming to a space or a place or celebrating with the community who doesn't put sustainable issues to the heart and core of congregating safely and sustainably. So that means things like all plastic forks, plastic knives, plastic glasses, plastic bottles are a no-no. So are we ready for that if we get the all clear in January? No, we're not. Who supplies that stuff? Take a look at Vision 2025, which my colleagues in the Association of Folk Organisers in the UK have been doing, which is very, very interesting about how you can deliver the footsteps or the footprint of an outdoor festival, medium, small and large, to the Kyoto type protocols. Julie's Bicycle is a wonderful NGO based in Canada, I think in the UK, and they have some wonderful ideas about how you can practically reduce your carbon footprint while being in a large entertainment and event venue. EU collaboration, Brexit, whether we like it or not, and whatever Eton mess shape it's going to arrive in, will be here in January 1. And that has its problems, but it also has advantages in that there's going to be a myriad of festival and culture groups in Europe who will be looking for an English-speaking partner. And they won't be able to get them all in the other state that has English as a first language in Malta, so they'll have to come looking to us. So what way is our event or our festival ready to engage in European collaboration? At a financing, at a sharing level. What stuff would we bring to the party? What stuff could we share and do? Cooperate. These are my favorite 3 C's, and they were my favorite 3 C's before the pandemic, as they will be after it. The festivals that will survive into 2030 are the ones who learn how to cooperate, how to cluster, and to collaborate effectively. So it's back to the Jack Higgins mantra in Cork City Hall, where he announced after the City of Culture that not every festival in the city was going to own a photocopier, have an office, or have a bookkeeper, because they were going to share one. And the money that they would have all been spending on those resources can be spent on their programs. And he wouldn't be giving any more, but he'd be dedicating it towards collaboration, clustering, and cooperation. And I think that is the real, I suppose, dilemma for organisers in counties like Donegal, like Galway, like Mayo, is we have to get used to doing things better together. I think the other trend, nobody wants to admit this, apart from Michael O'Leary, the only market for tourists will be the domestic market for 2 seasons. I don't see, and I don't know anybody other than Owen Corrie and perhaps Willie Walsh, who are disillusioned enough to think the American and Canadian and continental markets will be back here in droves. They won't. I mentioned the metropolitan population moving out. And how do you reach out to those creatives, and how do you harness them in to attending community events and to being involved in your festival? That's the challenge, and that means going to them and saying, hello, welcome to the parish, and we meet on Tuesdays, or can we have could you be friends with it on Facebook, etc., etc., etc. What the pandemic is teaching us is that family will come first and community second. For those who don't have family, it'll be community first, but that's an interesting juxtaposition of the individualism of the last 20 years. The third, another trend that I'm noticing is the hospitality trade are destroyed, and they need our creativity. They know how to open their doors and serve, but in terms of now getting a crowd, it's not just as simple as 3 men and a drunken badger at 8:30 in a corner on a Saturday night under the dartboard. That won't cut the mustard anymore. So what is it that we have been programming and producing that we could help our colleagues in that trade? I mentioned it already, the Zoomed Out and podcast in, and I think one of the biggest challenges is going to be to reconnect with our third age folk. The people who have underlying conditions, who are over 60, and who are really, really nervous of doing stuff with other age groups, even outside. And they were a huge element of our volunteer labor force and activization force for festival events. And we're going to have to reconnect with them, hug them appropriately when they're available to come and engage. But if we don't leave space for them, and if we don't see them on a radar, they won't come back to us at all. Some of you guys are old enough to remember Sesame Street. Bert and Ernie are these two hamsters. They used to sing a song called Cooperation. My mantra is not just a song. I think where the tourism industry will be in 2.5 seasons' time will be this small group tours. I don't see the large coaches being back in hotels again. Again, you're not going to read that, but that's what people are saying privately. If I can make this happen, whoops, I was going to try to see. This is 1.5 minutes if it works. And I hope you can pick up the sound.
Welcome to Australia's first COVID-safe music festival, held in Busselton, the event capital of Western Australia. Good Day Sunshine. How is this festival COVID-safe? 4 separate audience areas, each named after a surf break in the region, will allow the festival to go ahead under the current 2-person per square metre restrictions by keeping the audience interactions limited. There's one central stage named the turntable stage because, you guessed it, it rotates. Like many of the world's greatest acts, Good Day Sunshine's artists will perform in the round. Each area with their own entry, food outlets, bar, first aid, toilets, merchandise stand, free drinking water and staff will mean lines will be faster so that more time can be spent watching the artists. So join us for a world first and be a part of history with us. Good Day Sunshine Festival, October 31st at Barnard Park, Busselton. For more information, head to gdsfest.com.
I could just see Rosnowla there. I'm going to post in the chat function the links to the best advices on the regulations and codes of practice for running events safely at the current level of 234 where we are on the graph, and they're based for my colleagues in Theatre Forum. I'm going to share those in the chat room, and I'll also share them with Eamon and John at the end of this as well. So for me, I'm not despondent. We're going to have to rethink how we do things quite a lot. We're going to have to change the way we've thought about events. But as long as mankind has existed, and we've had lots of plagues, pestilence, famines, and pandemics before, we always seek as mammals to congregate, to commemorate, to celebrate, to make us feel what a community really means. And I think there will be a huge desire to do that when we get to the other side fully of this process. In the meanwhile, we have to limp along and do as best we can by being optimistic and being hopeful. So now that's, I think, at 48 minutes. Keshna, I'm happy to, I'll just move to the, I'll stop sharing and I'll go to chat. Hopefully there might be a question or two there.
Thank you for that, Colm. Found that very, very interesting, very informative, and done with great aplomb. Thanks very much. I love the analogy of the tidy towns and the social media highway. It'll stay with me, that image. So there is a couple questions there, John.
I'm scrolling through them as quickly as I can.
Yeah, there's a lot of people signing in. Actually, just as you're doing that, Donnan, could I ask you to unmute maybe and come in with your question, just to switch on your video there
sorry,
as well, Donnan,
John.
so everybody else can see
just
it.
the question is that we're hoping we're planning for our 5th Literary Festival, and this year we got funding. They increased their funding, whereas in years gone by they actually cut our funding, but that's a different story. But it was because we were one of the few organisations that said we're going to have our festival regardless, and then that we're worried that because a lot of section is that they want you to be seen to be increasing numbers year on year, and our problem is, look, we're going to be having our festival, but it's going to be all done remotely and online, and then we're wondering, are the funders going to penalise us then because we're not going to have the numbers that we were hoping to have, and are they going to judge us by, oh, how many people tuned in to your event online, and then we're not too sure because this is the first time we've ever done online events, and we're just worried about that funders will see, oh no, well, you didn't get a crowd last year, but the reason we can't have any crowd is that we're probably going to be under lockdown.
Donnan, I have to be honest with you and say that I have been, how will I put this now? I'm a skeptic at heart, but I have been heartened with the honesty of both Arts Council personnel and Fáilte Ireland personnel in the way they have honoured the letters of offer of 95% of all the festivals that I have seen funded this year. They have not penalised for people not being able to meet their milestones. My advice is you be as upfront with them as you are with this conversation here and say, here's what we are going to do. Here's how we're going to go about doing it. This is virgin territory for us. We have not presented online in our totality before, and we will give it our best shot. And if you have any advices or help to give us, please do so. But our committee are nervous that you won't honour the commitments in our funding letter if we fail to achieve these higher numbers, because multiple growth numbers can only happen in an online position. It can't happen offline this year, end of. But to be fair to all funders, I have not seen anyone penalised.
I suppose they'll honour the money this year. I'm wondering, next year, will they go, oh, well, you didn't have such and such coming? But that's what I'm wondering.
I know, I'll be honest with you, I think all our funding agencies will be that thrilled to hang on to as much of an event calendar as is possible. They will hug those versatile and creative communities of creatives tighter to their funding bosom than they ever will before, because I think we will lose 40% of our event calendar for 2021, tragically. So if you can hang on, they'll hug you.
No, thanks very much.
Very much so. And funders have funding to get rid of as well, and they have targets. So you're playing ball with them to nearly any extent, and you can show that you're trying and you're achieving. I can't see them not being happy to fund next year again, just purely based on the fact that they have their own targets to achieve. And if they see that you're willing to put in the hours and put in the effort and grow the festival in whatever way you can, I think they would be very supportive of that.
Marie Connolly, I think, is the next question there at 350. The issue of her team want to, in Independent Living Donegal, want to organise an Xmas social and awards event in a local hotel, and the best way to present something that would make the community feel inclusive, especially when many within the community would not have IT skills or technology within their homes. What I've seen done elsewhere is if the awards ceremony or the award activity in a hotel function suite with the correct number of numbers can be Facebook Live to areas in the village or areas around the town where you know your host audience might be gathered for a coffee. I don't know what way the library service is working, but places that could have a large screen TV, a pub, a coffee dock. If I would tie it in with Pension Day or whatever day her largest cohort of users might be in the town centre, and see if she can broadcast it simultaneously into those locations. Credit union counters also very often have a load of video monitors as well. Would the Super Value or the Londis in our town put up a wee stand with 10 chairs around it or across from the picnic bench and with sound, so that as many of those places where people tend to congregate naturally could see into the awards? What I've seen a number of nursing homes do in the last, I see Martin Donoghue from Cavan is in there, and then who was warden out playing music for those who were cocooning and being minded in Cavan with his Cultus tribe, God bless him. I've seen in Galway and Mayo and Clare, a lot of the nursing homes and frail centres would bring students or third level digital natives to the patio doors and set up a large screen and live stream something from a birthday party or a communion or whatever was going on. So there might be some possibilities there. But it's independent living, so perhaps her core group wouldn't be there. But something like that might work. Where I'm just scrolling down now here. The local councils are not engaging because they're warden out. Most of the librarian, the community outreach, the arts, the heritage officers were all dragged into COVID activity from mid-March to about mid-July. Then you had leave entitlements, then you had back to school, So they've not had a normal year, our administrative colleagues in the boroughs and in the local authorities. So I think Fingal County Council were the first I saw to put up their events funding applications early part of this week. So I think the city and county managers are having discussions on this. I know they were invited to take part in the event task force that's been led by Claire Duggan from XRTE. So they will be further down the road in how they're going to address this issue, I think within 2 or 3 weeks. Libraries not allowing persons back. Oh, right, okay. Yeah. I'm up to 356 with questions, I think, John.
Yeah, unless there's anybody who wants to unmute and click on their video and ask any questions. I have one question.
Sure.
Just you mentioned there around EU collaboration. How would groups become aware of that? The likes of Don in there with his literary festival, if there was some connection that he could look.
If people want to email me, I'll send stuff through the EU Festival Finder Facebook page, which is about, I think it's 3,000 festivals in Europe are affiliated with that now. I would also register your interest with the Creative Europe desk, because they're getting prompts regularly from community groups, cultural groups in EU who had British counterparts, 1 of 5 or 1 of 6 on these transnational programs, and they need to replace them with an English-speaking partner, because for a piece of work to tour outside of Europe, it needs an English-speaking partner. That's our opportunity. So I'm happy to divert that, but I would go to the Creative Europe desk and register to their e-zine, register to their prompts, and tick in the box that suggests this is what you're interested in. Can I just also make a final point, John and Eamon, if I may, that the good gentlemen behind the Donegal volunteer team are going to send to you all a survey monkey with 8 or 9 questions, just to signpost or pinpoint. Doing a presentation with me, as Marcin will attest, is like asking someone to take a sip from a fireman's hose. So there was a lot there, but if there's some topics that we could maybe spend a bit more time on in a workshop format, through social media, through Zoom, then it's something that we're prepared to examine. So the Survey Monkey is literally to see where do we go to next. If we were going to do maybe 4 of these between now and Christmas, what 4 topics or what 4 key areas would people think would make most sense for them right now at this juncture of their development with their event or festival? Does that make sense?
Yeah, entirely. Yeah, just to echo Colm's comment there. Yeah, look, we're keen to offer other sessions and offer other things that address needs that groups have, but unfortunately, myself and Eamon are a bit like the guys in the council. We're kind of washed out from running around all summer with COVID stuff. So, if you have ideas, this is the opportunity to put them through that Survey Monkey, and then we're willing to work with Colm to develop the sessions on whatever topics it is that are of interest to yourself. So, make sure that that's what you're coming back to us with, and we'll collectively gather it. Sorry, Colm.
There's a lady there, Ashley Nicoran, was wondering what the drive-ins. There's a working group of the event task force, who's actually looking at some issues around that. So I didn't want to preempt that. There's been 3 or 4 attempts at this where they've taken the national guidelines, implemented them in the field or in the stadia or in the park or in the thraw that they were going to go to, and then found that the local authority personnel weren't comfortable to see that interpretation on those guidelines. So this is where the City and County Managers Association have a unique role to play in making sure that whatever NEFIT signs off on can be implemented everywhere at the same time, as opposed to interpreted differently because it's not a regulation, it's a guideline. So I think there should be clarity on that for the Halloween spook films by 1st to 2nd week of October, or certainly a better steer in what will be the way forward. And I think it has huge potential for all of us in events to do. I mean, the amount of drive-by graduations, drive-by commemorations that happened all around the world in the worst times of the lock-in was phenomenal. There was padres being retired, there was firefighters being stood down, and the only way people could do it around the world was to get in your car, drive and honk your horn. So it's a safe way to do it because you're in the pod of the immediate family or whoever you're residing with. So yeah, there is traction there, but I don't want to preempt that. And if I give you some, so I didn't get around to putting in the chat the theatre forum guidelines and the other ones. I'll send those to Eamon and John, and you might send those with the SurveyMonkey, please.
We will. Tomorrow we will be issuing the SurveyMonkey, those links, the recording, the slides, the link to the video that was on earlier. All of those bits will all go out to yourselves that registered as part of this. Actually, yeah, just on the drive-ins there, there was a community project in Donegal, organised them over this past few weeks. They did drive-in movies in Rye Community Centre, and it was phenomenal. I took kids up on a Saturday evening. You know, it was really, really nice. So yeah, there is. It's a fantastic way to fundraise, and everybody did feel safe. You know, so yeah, whenever the guidance comes out, yeah, it'd be worth doing. And Rye, I think, would be very approachable to see how they went about doing it. If you're looking for the context there, if you let us know, we'll put you in touch with the ones that organised it. And they made a lot of money out of it for their own community centre. So no, it is definitely doable.
You know, we're especially thinking of children, and you know, to have some Irish language events for them.
No, kinship not.
So much, you know.
When Carter would like, there's, you know, by spatially, you know, because when the Tushman says the fast, sorry, yeah, it is. I know Ashley speaks Irish, so we always make an effort when we're on with the volunteer centre to do that. I think it's probably part of the approach that we're going to have over the next couple of years to make people feel comfortable. Sorry, Colm, I'm
actually, just to say there as well, that one of the things that I've seen done in New Zealand was to get the Poshley to make some documentaries of their own and to screen for a short list of 5 and to play those before the main showing of the fundraiser. And again, maybe if you have an interval set to sell your popcorn or to do your socially segregated chips, that you put on a couple of shorts from the people, the yoga from the parish, because that drives people to it and they get a sense to see their docudrama or just whatever they're doing on their phone up on the big screen. Great draw.
Excellent stuff.
No, that's all good.
If there's nothing else, we'll call it a day, folks. Thanks very much for joining us. Thanks very much, Colm, for your wisdom, insight.
I don't know if it's wisdom.
Well, don't take my word for it. There's a lot of nice comments coming from people that are starting to leave the room. So well done. And I hope we can repeat the festival's issue and the different topics of it in the coming months. I think there's plenty of issues there that need to be addressed and looked at, and there's a good forum here for it. So that's
all the bad comments must be going to Martin, are they, in Cavan?
Well, we'll talk to you about them later.
Yeah, that's it. No, look, it's fantastic, folks. Thank you very much for registering. We have that other session on tomorrow. If any of you are interested, you'll find it on our Facebook. And no, Míle maith go bhfuil.
So,
thank you.
Have I left?
Right, I'm going to end for all now, Damon. I'll chat you.
Okay.